Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning in to my videos. Welcome to a vlog, a spooky season vlog. I'm starting spooky season a little bit early because I wanted to get all the content for you. And so when September rolls around, when we start the fall vibes, the spooky vibes, we think seasonal reads, right? One of the, I think, #1 reads I see people talk about in the spookier months, the autumnal months, are dark academia books. This is a subgenre that I have not spent a lot of time in. I think I've pretty much only read Ninth House, I think. And I really did enjoy Ninth House, but it obviously didn't push me to read a bunch of other dark academia. So I want to do a vlog where I tried some, and I read some, and told you guys my thoughts on it. I'm only doing 2 books in this vlog because I have lots of spooky season content. I want to get out a lot of vlogs, so I'm trying to do shorter vlogs, I guess, but more of them, if that makes sense. So we are reading 2 majorly hyped, majorly big dark academia books. I was going to ask if you could guess them, but they'll be in the thumbnail, so you'll already know them. The first one I'll be reading is The Atlas 6 by Olivie Blake. This is the self-published version, but I am actually listening to the audiobook. I will be listening to the audiobook for both of these reads, I think. So I will be getting the full story, not the self-pubbed version, although I will say this edition is beautiful, and if you flip through it, there are illustrations. This beautiful illustration, and then we have another one right here between the parts. And yeah, I'm actually really excited for this one, mostly because Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction recently pointed something out, and it's 100% true. If you don't know Ashley, you should definitely check out her channel. She is the Dark Academia queen. Spooky season, seasonal autumnal reads on Ashley's channel. Like, that's my favorite time of year on Ashley's channel. Last year, she read, like, Edgar Allan Poe to us, and it was incredible. But definitely check out Ashley's channel. Ashley pointed out that our thoughts and feelings always either 100% match up or are completely the opposite. So what this means is we either both love or hate a book. We both love Realm of the Elderlings, and we both disliked Black Sun a lot. Or there's like Samantha Shannon books, which are Ashley's absolute favorites. I mean, I've only tried Prairie, but I don't get along with them. So it's either that our, like, we're on one side or the other side. There's no in between. We don't have books that we just like kind of match on, really. So I know Ashley absolutely adores this book. So I'm very excited to see whether I wholeheartedly agree with her and I adore it, or whether it's the opposite side of the spectrum and I absolutely despise it. I'm really, really hoping to love it. So much about this screams cool. Like, it just seems like a good vibe and a decently, like, September, back to school, dark academia feels proper. So I believe the Atlas 6 follows 6 characters who get invited to the prestigious Atlas Academy thingy, where they have to go through a year of training, but only 5 of them will come out. It's also based in the Library of Alexandria, and they all have cool different powers, and it sounds really cool, and I'm really excited to read it. So that's the first read. The second read I don't currently own, but it is Babel, however you say it. It doesn't matter. You know what book I'm talking about? By R.F. Kuang. Now, if you know me, you know the Poppy War is my favorite trilogy. I love the Poppy War. Ride or die the Poppy War. Do not come at it. It's amazing. So, as someone who doesn't really read dark academia, I was very terrified when R.F. Kuang announced this, but I said, I'm going to read it. I will pick up whatever R.F. Kuang writes. So I'm very excited to see my thoughts and feelings on this book, whether I wholeheartedly love it and it sits on the shelf next to the Poppy War as one of my favorites, or just like how I feel about it. R.F. Kuang has incredible writing. I think it's going to be an incredible journey that's going to make me think, and I'm super excited to read it. And again, it's another book that Ashley loves, so will I sit on the spectrum of me and Ashley wholeheartedly loving this book together, or will I hate a book she loves again? Who knows? Maybe this is just a taste testing if me and Ashley's tastes align thing now. But anyways, I'm very excited to get to these books, so here we are. So I've started the Atlas 6. I think I'm about 60 pages in. Nope, I'm less than that. I'm literally on page 60. Look at me go. I'm on page 60. I'm listening to the audiobook. I've so far had a POV from every single one of the 6 main characters. I'm really intrigued. I'm really enjoying it so far. I don't have a lot of like thoughts besides that, and I'm really enjoying the like prestigiousness and the pretentiousness of the characters, and I think that if the book plays into that vibe, I will enjoy it, and I'm excited to see it go that way. But I think it has to like do it. Like it can't borderline being too pretentious. It just needs to go and be these pretentious know-it-all kids who like, they're not even kids, like young adults, I guess, who like think that they're the best and have these super magical abilities, and you know, like rich families, rich kids. I'm looking up. It's a fast read in the audiobook, and I'm excited to continue. I will say the audiobook is full cast in the sense of each character has its own narrator, which is something I like. Normally when someone says full cast, though, I think that like something like J.C. Jones and the Six, where like each line is said by that character. That's not how it is. It's just that each POV has its own narrator. Some are better than others, for sure. And I think this will be a book where I drag through a couple characters, but I really wholeheartedly love a couple characters. So far, I really enjoyed Libby's POV. I think that her banter with Nicholas. I think her banter with Nick is really funny in her POV, but I didn't overly like it in his POV. And then I was kind of bored with Raina and Tristan, but I liked Callum's POV, and then I really liked the last girl we had in People's Thoughts. I thought that she was really cool, and I really liked the way her chapter went, and I really enjoyed meeting all these characters and how we met them. I thought it was really interesting of the character to like essentially set all of these 6 people up in the same situation, but how it is different based on who they are and what they want and what they need out of the situation. And I thought that was really interesting just to see, like, it is the basic, like, it is all the same idea and concept of getting an invitation from a guy to the academy, but it's all done the same but different. I don't know. I thought that comparison was really cool, and I have high hopes. Okay, let's stop talking. Let's get to reading. So I have reached about halfway into the book, and I am still actually really enjoying it. I'm quite shocked by the level of enjoyment I'm having. It's a book that's just like a fun time, if that makes sense. Like, there's nothing super crazy to it. It's not the most technical piece of writing I've ever read, but it's just a good time. I definitely have noticed that there's characters that I really, really like, and then I just don't really care about the rest of the characters. The characters aren't the most likable in it, even though there are 2 that I really, really like. And I would say my prediction is pretty spot on for ones I liked. The only one that I think I was wrong about is the girl that is seducing everyone. At the point I'm in right now, I'm actually pretty sure they're about to have a threesome. Can't lie. Which I did not realize was part of this book. I don't really have much more thoughts than this. I don't really know if you would count this book as a fantasy. Like, if you have read it, sound off down below. Do you count this book as a fantasy? And for me, like, I get that Ninth House and the Atlas Six and probably Babel are fantasies, but the fantasy is so light that, like, they just kind of feel like contemporaries. Like, they just kind of feel like fiction with some fantasy, you know? Just some made-up ideas in it. Nothing, like, insane. It's just, like, it's not my typical fantasy, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm actually really happy that I decided to read this because this was the push I needed. This vlog was the push I needed to get us there. Does that make sense? And I have a little reading nook set up for the vlog to do some dark academia reads and talk to you about. I've got some wine. I am crocheting my genre blanket. I'm really far behind, and I'm literally at Smut Den, which is May. Oops, super far behind, and then just relaxing. You know, I actually will probably finish this tonight. I have about 2 more hours left of the audiobook, and I'm really excited, so I will catch up with you then. finished the Atlas 6. Now, I want to tell you that I really enjoyed my time with this book. I had a really fun time and I liked it for what it was. I really did enjoy it. I don't regret a second reading this book. I had a lot of fun with it and I will highly be recommending it to certain people. Not everyone, but certain people. At the end of the day though, I am just giving this book a 3 stars. It's a mediocre read for me. I think it's like a chocolate cake kind of read. Like, it's just delicious and fun and you want to read it and keep going, but it's not the most longevity thing that you can eat. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Like a popcorn read, just read for fun. I have some things I liked about this book. I really liked the pretentiousness. I loved the vibe of the book. Like, I feel like this does scream dark academia to me. It does have those pretentious characters in this school setting, and they're very high and mighty and all that. Like, I loved that. What I didn't like about this is some of the characters. This book is fully character driven. There is not a single part of this that isn't character driven. Like, what plot? What plot exists in this book? We get plot questions that are never answered. Like, there are so many questions I had about this book. Like, we were leading up to, what is Atlas Blakely's actual plan? What is the society? Why is the library all powerful? Why do they want in it? I didn't get any questions. I didn't get any answers. But, tangent, characters. This is a full character book, and there are characters that I absolutely adored in this. I really loved Libby, and I'm a sucker for a Nick, so I loved Nico. And, that I had a character I absolutely despised and hated their chapters, and then I had characters that I was like, did the author just forget this person existed? Like, Raina just exists in this book. Like, you get a Raina POV and really nothing happened, and there's no reason for the Raina POV. There's no reason for her character to exist. I knew the predominant characters, the ones that actually mattered to the story quite early on. You could definitely tell that those chapters were a lot more interesting. They were well thought out. That character had ambitions and goals, and you really felt like you understood those characters quite early on. Yeah, so Raina, I just feel like it was an afterthought of the author who decided to make it Atlas 6 instead of Atlas 5 because 6 sounded better. Tristan. I hated Tristan. I hated his chapters with a passion, but the thing is, I loved Tristan from other people's point of view. I think that part of this was the audiobook for me. I really hated how the narrator portrayed Tristan. He also talked at a million miles a minute, but I felt like Tristan's POV didn't line up to me at what everyone else was saying and feeling about Tristan. And I really wanted to like him when I was in his POV, but I dreaded getting to his chapters. I also didn't care about a couple of the other ones, and Callum felt a little dry to me, but Eva at least had interesting things going on, and the last girl, who I can never remember the name of. I liked her. She had a lot of interesting things going on, but again, I wasn't thoroughly engaged in all of her chapters. We had some chapters of hers were really good and I was hooked, and then some chapters she was just seducing everyone and I was like, okay, I'm done. But the chapters where you actually got cool information from her power, really liked that. That was cool. I liked seeing all their powers, but I really would have liked to know more about their powers and what they meant. And as I said before, I really kept waiting for why do these people want to be part of the society? I was never given a reason to why the society is all powerful. We were just kind of told it was, and then they're like, I will kill to be in the society. But why? Why? Someone tell me why. Another issue, I just really thoroughly didn't enjoy the ending. I have an unpopular opinion. I feel like everyone loves the ending. The ending is a shock to most people. Specifically, don't like that one of the things I was told would happen in this book, from the synopsis, from everything, doesn't happen. And I feel like the ending is kind of a bit of a cop-out to that. And also to have it happen in the past as well, have that cop-out. I'm just kind of about that. Yeah, those are my big issues. And why it didn't get 5 stars. Logically thinking, I just couldn't give this book 4 or 5 stars because I had issues with it, but I had such a good time reading it. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think I felt the same way about Ninth House when I read Ninth House. I think I gave it 3 stars. I mean, I did a makeup look inspired by Ninth House at some point in my life, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was fun, and I liked the vibe of it and all of that. So I'm wondering if I'm just gonna feel that way about Dark Academia, if they're popcorn reads for me, a aesthetic read, an atmospheric read that I'm not going to maybe wholeheartedly love, which is fine. A 3-star is great. I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I will be continuing the series. I also have questions that need to be answered, so I will be continuing. In other news, I read the audiobook, and you would have seen me following along with the physical book. Now these don't match up because I was physical, I have the self-pubbed, and the audio is the traditionally pubbed. So I just wanted to mention here, I didn't follow along for all of it, but I did probably for the last 100 pages, 150 pages. It was pretty easy to follow along for the most part. There was an addition of like words and some words taken out and some add-on sentences. I noticed that it really felt like it had gone through another editing phase, and that editing phase really did help. We had additions of sentences that mattered enough to give us backstory of something or give a little bit more description of what we saw, but didn't take away from what the story was or didn't add too much to the story for most of it. When I got to the last 50 pages, however, I actually really struggled following along because the last 50 pages have a lot of extra words to them. There's a lot of extra pages. There's a lot of extra discussion you get. However, I don't think that if you had read the self-pub book, that I was actually missing that much. I think that the basic premise is the same, but I do think that you got more from the traditional published one and all of that. There was definitely some differences, and I do think that that the editing that the traditionally published book did was well worth it, and I do think that she added a lot of stuff. Would I reread it again if I hadn't done it? Probably not, because I think that what I read was enough to get me by for the second one. Does that make sense? Like, if you only read self-pubbed, I think that you can get by not rereading it again and just continuing, although I obviously haven't read the second book, so I have no idea. I just don't think they were that different. I just think that the new book adds a little bit more, like, definition and density and, like, shading to the story. It adds just a little bit more color to the story. But, yeah, here we are. Book 1 done for the vlog. I've been talking for 10 minutes about this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hate when I say I give something 3 stars, but I really enjoyed it because I know all of you are going to think that, oh, it's a bad book then. No. On to the next one, which I'm very excited for. Hi, it's release day, so let's go get Babel. Okay, so obviously the vibes of Dark Academia and why we want to read them in the fall is because back to school. We're all just back to school in September, so you read about school, which sounds really weird because who liked school? Not me. I hated school, so why do I want to read about school? I don't know. So I did my hair in like this like wavy thing because this is probably what you would have seen me wear circa high school. But college, I woke up. I worked full-time during college, so I worked at a bar. I was a bartender, so I got home from my shift at like 3 a.m. to get up for school at like 8 or 9, which was partially probably why I dropped out and I hated it so much, because I most of the time just didn't go to class because I was so tired from working a 10-hour shift the night before. Also, I just hated it. Like, I'm just making excuses up here. I'm just not a school person. I didn't enjoy it. But I would just wear sweatpants. Honestly, if I changed out of the sweats that I wore to bed, that was a big plus, because I typically wore hoodies and a sweatpant to bed and would just like wake up and go to school because I was so exhausted, like last second possible, if I even got myself up to go to school. One of the things I always got every morning was coffee. So we're getting coffee because I can't live without coffee in my life. Me and my friend, I drove her, and we would stop and she would get a coffee and I would get a Booster Juice breakfast because they have really good breakfast and we had them on campus. Yeah, I wanted to go like find like a Dark Academia type vibe to go sit at today, but to be honest, I don't have any. Like, I see all these beautiful videos from like Ashley out in Scotland and stuff, but Scotland's been around for way longer than we are, like hundreds of thousands of years, so they have like these beautiful buildings that were built. I've probably been out of focus this entire time and I'm sorry. They have these like beautiful buildings that were built. We are way more modern than that. Our buildings look like modern buildings everywhere we go. The only one I can think of is maybe the U of A dentist building is really, really pretty, but I'm still not entirely sure because I technically have a ticket for my car at the U of A. so I don't know if I want to go there. So I'll have to park really far away and walk because I have not paid the U of A ticket. Life with Cassidy.
Hi there, welcome to Starbucks. What can I get started for you?
Hi, can I get a grande chocolate cream cold brew?
Sure.
Can I get that with extra cold foam?
Sure.
And a chocolate croissant?
Rhonda?
Yes, please.
Okay.
That's everything.
9:45 schedule.
Perfect, thank you. Let's do a book haul because I bought way too much. The first thing I bought is just a 2023 planner. As a wedding photographer, my years are planned out so far in advance, and I've just been waiting for new planners to come out so that I could grab one, because right now my 2022 planner has 2023 dates scribbled all the way through it, but this is also good for planning out content and doing all that fun stuff. So I have this here, first thing I bought, and I think it's really, really pretty. I mostly use a monthly spread in these things, so I'm kind of picky, and I always want to be able to flip right on open to a monthly spread because that's pretty much all I look at when I'm planning something out. Obviously, I came here to get Babel. Beautiful. The lady in the store was very excited I was buying it, but she also slightly made fun of me, but I loved it. She was like, "Your Plum Points card gets a lot of use." And I was like, yes it does. But I'm super excited for this one. I was 25% off because it was a new release. It is an Indigo exclusive, but like there's nothing special to it. I think there might be just like an added chapter at the end. Ooh, I love just like the naked hardback. It's just pretty in black. I figured I couldn't go wrong with buying the hardback because it will then match the Poppy War hardbacks that I have. Otherwise, I typically buy a paperback, but we can read that today. The other new release I came for today is Clown in the Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives. I'm super excited to read this one. I actually bought the audiobooks for both Babel and Clown in the Cornfield 2 this morning, but I wanted the physicals with it. I'm so excited for this one. There is a vlog coming. I think the 3rd or 4th month of September is when it's supposed to be out, called Clowns Are Scary, where I read this one and the Cotton Candy Massacre, which these are very two different vibes for clown books, so it's really exciting to see them in a video. And yeah, I want the hardback. Ooh, it's red with black writing. Stunning. I really made the employees work for this because this came in this morning and they hadn't put it out yet, and I was like, please get it for me. I bought some old releases. I bought Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. I've heard Mel from Eleanor Reads and Kaylee from Kaylee's Books both talk about how much they adored this book and how they keep thinking about it months later after reading it and keep wanting to find a book that makes them feel the way this book feels. And so I'm super excited to read it. I don't really know anything. I know it's like an underwater horror, and that sounds really spooky and creepy. I know it has a little bit of science to it, and I'm excited for this one. I bought There's Someone Inside Your House. I've had good luck with YA horror. So this one I saw on TikTok, I think someone talk about it. I've been spending a lot of time on horror talk, trying to find recommendations. I really wanted to do like a TikTok horror, reading TikTok's best horror books or whatever, but I couldn't figure it out. But I've been getting so many recommendations for it, and lots of my vlog content will be those kind of books. But this one just looks really fun. I think it'll be such an easy read. It's about, I think, it just says, as the body count rises and terror grows closer, will McKenny survive the killer's twisted plan? And I think there's gruesome murders with grotesque flair. Then I just bought City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. If you saw my TBR video, I need to read this month, so I needed to get a copy of it because my library copy is really far in advance still for the ebook, so I just figured I'd buy it for like a spoiler alert. I will be reading this for my reading fantasy books with a murder mystery plot. I think that's a pretty good book haul. I completely forgot about this building and I'm happy I remembered it. Behind me and the clips that you will see is the government house. This is the former vice regal's residence to the former first 6 lieutenant governors who made their elegant Jacobean revival style mansion their home. This closed as residence in 1938 and it served various roles for about 40 years, but now it's just like a house that's reopened for like government conferences, but the grounds are open to the public, just the inside isn't. I think you can actually get tours, which would be cool. I've never seen the inside, but I think that this is such a pretty place. I am here all the time for photo shoots, so I don't really know why I forgot about it because they do a lot of like wedding stuff back here, but I think the grounds are the perfect place right now for a little reading break and a cute little setup, and definitely give me a little bit of dark academia vibes, or just like, you know, light academia maybe more than dark academia, but I feel like I fit light academia a lot more than I fit dark academia. But we're reading great books, and we have Babel here, and I'm so excited. I hope I love this. I really, really hope I love it, but I think it might be a little too smart for me, but we're gonna see. I started Babel. I'm only on chapter 4, so I'm not far in, but I am so bored. This book feels like a textbook, and it's meant to feel like this. It's meant to feel like it's like educating you. I feel like I'm being lectured in university. But that's not the vibe I want when reading. I read for enjoyment. I do love fantasy books that discuss heavy-hitting subjects, but I want them to be a little bit more like nuanced. I want them to be hidden in the writing. I want to have to work for that. I don't want to feel like I'm sitting in a classroom just being lectured. I want to like work for it. I'm so bored. We haven't really, there's been one, I'm not sure if I've met fantasy. It kind of feels more like sci-fi, the things I've seen at this point, but not really. Like it just, I haven't seen any of the fantasy stuff at this point. I actually think that this book should have been marketed as historical fiction. Like it's very historical. It's got that vibe. It also really reminds me so far of the Midnight Library in terms of the pacing and the slowness and how bored I feel because I hated the Midnight Library. So if you liked the Midnight Library, check this out. I'm not DNFing at this point. I trust R.F. Kuang to get me there. I do trust her to make me feel for characters, feel for things happening, and to enjoy the overall story, because obviously The Poppy War is one of my all-time favorite books. I don't even know why I said one. It is my all-time favorite book. I'm absolutely adored that book. And you know what? That book is a little bit more in your face with the discussions and conversations it has, since those things actually did happen in real life. But it still is hidden a little bit more, and the way it was done got me a little bit more caring from the beginning, where this one just hits hard like a historical fiction from the beginning. Just not my typical vibe. But I do trust her. I am very excited to maybe love this, so I am continuing still. I do highly suggest the audiobook. The audiobook is my saving grace. If I did not have the audiobook, I would not be continuing. I don't think it'd be possible, because I really found myself like skimming things and not comprehending things when I was physically reading it. I think actually doing a tandem read of audio and physical would be perfect for this book. Also, the book is gorgeous, but yeah, I love the audio, and it does have footnotes in it, but the audiobook has a different narrator for the footnotes than it does for the regular narration, which is a prime thing that is done in this book, because otherwise footnotes get real confusing. Anyways, I need to go do some stuff, so I'll see you guys in a bit. I have been actively avoiding you guys and avoiding talking about this book so much that I've actually completed it since the first time we talked. And I have thoughts. I have lots of thoughts. But I need you to know one thing. I need you guys all to know that if this book had been written by any other author, okay, I maybe still would have picked it up if it was S.A. Chakraborty, but any other author other than R.F. Kuang or S.A. Chakraborty, I would have never in a million years picked this book up. I was picking this up on the sole basis that I love and adore the Poppy War trilogy so freaking much, and that I loved R.F. Kuang's writing in it. I loved the conversations and the nuances, and I loved the brutality of it. And I want to say that all of those things do still shine through in Babel, but I hated every second of reading this book. I should have DNF'd this book last time we talked. It went downhill from then, and it was already not off to a great start. Every time I picked up this book, I said to myself, I'm so freaking bored. Every single time. Nothing about this book compelled me to read it, compelled me to pick it up. I was avoiding attempting to read it. I was trying to do all these other things. I refused to let myself start another audiobook just because I knew if I did, I would never get through this. I probably should have DNF'd it, but I just kept thinking, but like, what if she does it? What if it's R.F. Kuang? And what if she just grips me at some point? Sadly, that didn't happen at all. I am giving this book a 1 star. And I feel kind of terrible giving it a 1 star just because it is well written. It is a beautiful book with very, very deep and insightful thoughts and conversations and discussions on things such as privilege or race and your gender. I'm gonna move this. And it's very, very well written. But I rate books out of my enjoyment, and I cannot sit here and give this book more than 1 star because there's not a second of this book where I was intrigued by something. Yes, it had all those insightful conversations, but they were done in a way that just didn't grip me and I didn't attach to. So we had lots of these conversations in the Poppy War. This gets way deeper, I will say. And that side of the Poppy War just gripped me so much. Babel lost me in so many ways, and so many things in this book that I just do not enjoy reading about. And that's what it really comes down to. One of the biggest issues I have with this is probably the academia setting, which sounds really weird when I'm reading dark academia books, but like when I read the Atlas 6, it's just fun. It was a fun, pretentious read, and you really saw the pretentiousness. Now, I knew this wasn't going to be like fun. It was going to be more insightful and thoughtful than the Atlas 6, but I wanted that like pretentiousness that you get out of dark academia. I wanted this like setting and this vibe, which I felt like I didn't get. What I did get is university lectures. I feel like if you are the type of person who enjoys schooling, if you want to go to school constantly, like I know my aunt said her dream job would just to be a student forever, you could like this. I think that you will like this. Like, there's so much to do with learning. Kuang did her research and she's teaching you throughout the story so much. That's just not my personal preference in a book. I'm reading for enjoyment. I'm reading for escapism. I'm reading to have a good time. I felt like I was being lectured the entire time. And as someone who earlier told you I dropped out of school and I hate school, this was not fun. The other thing I really despised about this book was the culture it promotes, and it's a culture that a lot of people love and adore, I guess, but it's something that I really hate and makes me just, like, mentally exhausted, is this idea of just, like, eat, sleep, work, repeat, and just this, like, culture of draining yourself for society, and the community that builds around you, and the friendship you can make with people who also are doing that, and I don't want to read about that. I think that there's so much more to life than just work. This is why I have hobbies. This is why I do things such as read. I really am in life to enjoy my life. I'm not going to live my life till I'm 80 and just eat, sleep, work, repeat. And that's what everyone did in this. And yes, I think that there were discussions on what that meant, and it went deeper. Like, she wasn't just glorifying it. Like it was a real discussion and essay about that culture, but it was just so draining to read about for me. This whole book just drained me the entire time, and it just wasn't fun. It just wasn't escapism. I just didn't enjoy it. That's all I have to say. Like, really, this just was not a book for me. I cannot stress that at all. I really hated this book, and it will be the worst book of the year. Like, I cannot tell you how much I despised every second of reading this book, but I can tell you I understand why so many people love it and adore it, and I'm going to be an unpopular opinion. I'm going to be putting out these thoughts that people are like, what? This was an incredible read, especially if you adore things like that. Another thing is, this book should have been freaking historical fiction. I get why it's not, because, like, if you're a historical fiction girly, there's so much fantasy in this that you'd be like, this isn't historical fiction. But if you're a fantasy girly like me, you're like, this is historical fiction. Like where's the fantasy? Like, there is fantasy, and the magic system reminds me of the magic system in Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. They are different, but it does have that kind of idea, but the way it's done in this one is so light to the fact that, like in Jade City, when you talk about Jade City and you say you could take any resource and put that in and you would have the same book, that's the same with this. And I think it was meant to be that way, but for my own enjoyment, that did nothing for me. I read a historical fiction book, and I despise historical fiction. That is one genre you will not catch me dead reading. I literally hate it. Like, it's the worst possible type of book for me. And that's what I read here. Like, I read historical fiction with, like, the steadiest bit of fantasy. So if you go into this book expecting a lot of fantasy, it's not there. It's not there. If you go into this book expecting pretentious fun, it's not there. Maybe what I want, like, this just was not a book for me, and if it had been anyone other than R.F. Kuang, I would have picked it up, and I'm repeating myself, but I really need to stress this into your brains, because I feel like I'm being harsh giving this book 1 star, but I'm going to have nightmares about reading this book because of how bored I was, and that just, I'm angry. I'm angry because I wanted to love this, and how can my all-time favorite author be now my, like, also worst book I think I've ever read? Like, the only other time I've ever felt this bored and this despising a book was The Midnight Library, which, to be honest, I kind of see the vibes being similar. And so, like, that just type of story just does not work for me. If you loved The Midnight Library, just ignore my thoughts on this, because obviously then we have completely different thoughts on that style of book. But yeah, I have nothing else to say besides, like, this was terrible. And I can't believe I read it. But let's wrap things up. So we have these 2 books that I read this vlog, and one was a hit and one was not a hit at all. Needless to say, Babel, standalone. Oh, that's another thing I didn't like about it. I'm not a standalone girly. I have to tell you what I really hated about it. This will be a spoiler for this book and the Poppy War. If you haven't read the entire Poppy War trilogy and this book, skip to this part. But for you people who have, I need to rant with you. Something that completely irked me was that this ends the exact same way the Poppy War does, and I felt like that took away the ending of the Poppy War trilogy to me. Like, I was obsessed with that ending, and I felt like it was the most fulfilling ending I've read. I felt so satisfied with the ending for Rin, for our crew, for the kingdom, for the empire, for the nation. And then I read this, and I was like, can R.F. Kuang just not end a book another way? Like, I was just very disappointed that the endings were the same. That's all. That was my rant, and I really hate that. And if she writes another book and it ends this way, we're gonna have a talk, because this was not acceptable for me, at least. But yeah, also didn't feel a single thing when I read this book because I just was so bored. So the ending really didn't get me. Where, like, the Poppy War, I felt. Okay, and now back to talking about both of the books. Okay, so I read both of these books, and one was a hit, one was not a hit. I will be picking up Dark Academia, I think, again next year around this time. I will pick up the second Atlas 6 book, and I think I will pick up the next book in the Ninth House series, the Alex Stern series, but I definitely will not be reading anything that remotely sounds similar to Babel. Nothing ever again. I don't need a Dark Academia books with footnotes. But those are my thoughts. Thanks for hanging along with me for your first week of school, and I hope that you have a great fall and enjoy the rest. Next week you can expect from me a murder mystery recommendation list, fantasy books with murder mystery recommendation list, and a reading murder mystery fantasy books while solving a cold case. And one random video that I haven't planned out yet, but it's coming. So I'll see you guys then. If you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon, all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.